about to start recording. Let you know we've started recording. Just by way of introduction to everybody, we have 3 speakers today, which is Steve, Boston and myself, and we have facilitation done by both Innie and VG. Steve and Boston have both edited and written numerous articles and also reviewed for journals. I've written articles and reviewed for journals and conferences as well. So just to give you a bit of an overview of a typical ranked journal process, what you have is the, once you submit the paper into a journal, you'll find that the manuscript's actually logged, so you get given a reference number. It's checked and the receipt of acknowledgement is emailed through to the author that submits the paper. The editor then looks at the submission and they'll either do what's called a desk reject, and that's rejecting without a review. If it goes past that vetting, it will go into what's called an external review. So what the editor will do is send it out to a minimum of 2 reviewers. They do a review, they have a time frame which could be up to a month to review and send that information back to the editor. The editor would then consider the review quality. They may ask for further review or take that review you've provided. That then goes back through a acceptance pending process. And that process is, it'll either reject there as well. The editor may decide, look, it just really isn't at the right level, and the reviewers have supported that with their comments. And that'll be a resubmission, and they may not encourage you to come back to that journal, or they may actually encourage you to review their document, bring the quality of the paper up and resubmit to that same journal. From that, from the reviews coming back from the reviewers, the editor may actually go straight to accept a paper. That is not that common. Most often there is a acceptance pending revision that will go back to the author that it needs to do those revisions, and they have a dedicated amount of time to do those revisions before they send it back through to the editor. At that point, the editor, again, could do another reject because the information and the review has not come up to the quality required. They could also accept it, say it is at that required level, or it could go back to the reviewers. And quite often I'll have a review a second time for the changes that the person's made to the article. Again, it could go through several iterations of that before it's actually accepted. Once it's accepted, there is a production and publication process. So that could all take quite a number of months. It actually can take up to around 3 years for any given article. So just to give you an idea, there's a number of places where an article can get rejected from a journal. There's quite a number of times where there's iterations going around for changes to be made. So it's certainly not straightforward. When you're looking at a journal, things to remember is really have a look at the journal you want to target and make sure that your article aligns with what their aim is. If you're doing an article that has nothing to do with that journal, it'll be rejected outright, and it may be a brilliant article. You've just targeted the wrong journal. Another one is confirming that you sell the article in your covering letter. Don't discount the quality of the covering letter. It tells the journal why your article should be considered. And another high rejection rate really is around reasons such as formatting. Having a look at what the journal wants as far as formatting, grammar, reference checking, reference, etc., could be a reason why they reject. Don't give them that opportunity to reject based on that. So if you get those type of things right, that really helps. Take into account up to 95% of papers are rejected. So, but you need to take that rejection and take it as a learning opportunity rather than shutting you down. Don't be demoralized by it because it is such a high rejection rate. And where there's feedback given, because quite often you'll find that even if it is a desk reject, you do get very good feedback from the editor. Or if you get external peer reviews, you get feedback coming back as well. So take that on board and use that to improve your paper before you submit it either back to that same journal or to an alternate journal. And of those papers approved, you'll find very, very few will go through the process of straight to publication. There's always a process of review before it goes through. This faded in the background is purely a couple of rejection letters and acceptance letters I've received for journals. So they do give you a lot of really good information. If you're looking at preparing to writing itself, so the planning stage is crucial. You really need to identify the questions you do want to answer, analysis to be reported, and whether you're going to be solo or co-authoring. And if you're co-authoring, make sure you agree with your co-authors before we proceed, and then target your publication and their requirements. Because what you find is setting up your template may be different for different journals. So once you understand which journal you're going to target, set up your template, your page size, your headings, those type of things. Get your outline in place. You do quite a rough draft to start with, and you use your journal checklist to make sure you've got that aligned. Then you'll go through an iteration of, and particularly if you're with co-authors, iterations to bring the paper up to the quality ready to go back through to final submission. And you may find you go through conferences as part of that process of bringing that article up to the quality for a journal. But don't forget to always put that important cover letter to the editor-in-chief to make sure it's selling your paper why they should be going through. What I might do is stop sharing and put it back through to if anybody has any experiences with putting into journals, if they'd like to share that at all. Did anybody from the audience want to share any examples or any experience they've had with writing?
Yeah, I think I can share, and this is something both is Ini with us too, because both Ini and
Yes.
I, after we completed our doctorate with University of Liverpool, have tried our hand at reaching out to different associations and journals where we can publish. And it's been quite, I won't say, based on Jackie's slide, we haven't gone through that long drawn process of 3 years yet. So you're pretty fresh on the board. And it has been encouraging, the kind of feedback that we've got. And most often right now, the initial stages where we have reached out for publications, we've sent out an abstract, and we would get back a response from them with regards to how the scope has to be widened. One of the action research journals that we sent our papers to required us to actually include an implementation cycle, and they said there was lack of implementation or lack of intent of implementation within the paper. So those kind of feedbacks came back to us. But we haven't gone through that experience, but I'm sure Ini can add more. We are still fresh, and we are still excited, and we are still keen on publishing, and looking forward to it and trying our hands at it.
Did you want to add to that at all, Ini?
Yeah, let me see if I can add to that. I hope there's not much background noise from my side, because I'm actually driving, trying to get back to the house to link up with my laptop. I'm talking with my phone. Yeah, what Viji has said is very true. The only other side I could add, which is an experience I had, is that I tried to publish my thesis in a manner speaking. And when I discussed with some peers, I was guided to, and my former supervisor, that I could take the route of a development paper. That's because the BAM conference was coming up. So yes, I did that. And I, just like Jack has said, you already have an idea of the journal you want to target. So with that, I was able to choose the African stream, in the BAM conference, which I now presented my thesis as the development paper in which I got real good feedback in terms of what I was trying to say and how I was trying to say it. And that is actually what I'm also working on the sideline with the information I got from them. Yeah, they actually told me that it's not a one-off thing. you know, so I do intend to now actually send that paper in, but with what Jack is saying, I am already prepared that it's not a straightforward journey, but hang in there and take all the feedback you can get, you know, and let's see how it goes. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny.
Yeah.
Did anybody else have any experience they want to share at all?
I guess at one point, Stephen and myself and you, Jack, will start talking about our good and bad experiences. But let us still wait if somebody else has actually a good idea how to do it, or how to do it better, and how to do it faster, and how to do it, I don't know what. So yeah, I mean, I guess we've had many pleasant, unpleasant, whatever it is, experiences, as I said, in any direction. But I don't know, as I said, I don't want to start talking right now yet. But we can talk about this topic actually probably for hours. Anyway, if somebody else wants to say something, just come. Give us actually some starting points. But generally, I mean, you know, the first, I don't know, where should I start? I mean, we are now talking about why we are not able to, or why is it hard to. I don't want to start because
okay, let's start with the positive.
No, yeah, as I said, I don't know if this one is a positive one, but you know, I always plan with my students while we are planning the PhD, in which journal we want to publish, which part we want to publish in any of the journals. So that is planning. You mentioned planning in advance. And that's, I would say, I don't know how many here have already finished their PhDs, how many haven't, but for the ones who haven't, start planning well in advance and start thinking which part you want to publish in in which journal. So that's for me an extremely important, I would say, yeah, direction even before you have finalized actually your PhD or DBA, okay? That's the first thing which makes really sense. Because based on that, you will be definitely able to be faster or definitely successful at one point. So that's the first thing. But that's maybe, I don't know if it's a positive or a negative one, but that's something else.
I take it as a positive.
Okay.
You're also taking the thesis, you could end up with 5 or 6 different papers out of it. Don't assume you need to.
I mean, six papers out of a PhD, that's quite a lot. I would say the supervisors, I don't know what Stephen will say, but I would say the supervisors, we are happy with 2 papers. And if the PhD was really good and planned well in advance, and I mean, everything was done in a proper way. I mean, 6, I don't know if I have ever actually done, but I guess 5 good papers, that was, I would say, max directly from the PhD, okay? But I mean, then a little bit around and adding stuff, that is something else. But yeah, I would say the supervisors, I mean, us, I don't know what Stephen will say, but I'm happy with 2 papers in a decent journal. So that's one thing. So plan well in advance, okay, and try to align with the journalists and stuff like that even before you do that. And yeah, I mean, you can even think actually which parts will go in what journal. What are you preparing for there? Even the literature review can be written that way. I mean, and stuff like that. So you can do it even before. That's what I would just like to say to the planning. Then I mean, then I don't know. You mentioned 95%.
Up to 95%.
Yeah, I mean, that really depends in which journal you want to go. That's
That'd
another
be a
thing.
3 to 4 star. You're probably up to 95%.
Yeah, as I said, it's another thing which has to be planned and thought of. I mean, why are you publishing? Is it publishing because you want to actually kind of enter the academia? If you want to do that, then probably the requirements on the, let's say, journals are different than if you are kind of trying to continue, or you are continuing actually your let's say job or whatever it is. Actually that's something else. Once again, then you probably don't have to go so high with those stars or impact factor or other side scores or whatever it is. So that's another thing. And if you are going to a lower, let's say, ranked journal, then probably you will be publishing much faster and much easier and with a lot less headache and work and stuff like that. So these are all questions you have to take care before you actually even start planning to publish in a, let's say, distinct journal. So these are things you have to think of. I mean, if it's just about publishing, then it is actually kind of, just publish for the sake of publishing is no issue. You can always find a journal which is really actually kind of not really demanding, and that will go really, really fast. But yeah, if you want to go actually really high, as you said, mention stars or whatever it is, or A stars or something like that, or high impact factor, it can take you, definitely easy 2 years. I agree with that. And you will be suffering.
Go through the
You will be
cycling
suffering.
process.
Definitely. I mean,
Yeah.
because, there are journals where you are waiting actually for the first feedback. Even you can get even desk rejected. Let's say more than 6 months, up to 12 months, even to get actually rejected. But I mean, that you get, I mean, I don't know where should I start with planning phase and with strategy where to and how to publish. As I said, the most important part is, why do you want to publish in what journal? That's probably the decision. As I said, just to get it published, that's not a big issue. The ranking, the percentage, I mean, in good journals, you will anyway see on their homepage what is the rejection rate. And in good journals, you will actually see how long does it take, because many journals are kind of keen to be fast. And you have some journals. I mean, we published, I guess, 2 or 3 papers in sustainability, and that goes really fast. 1 week, actually, editors, I mean, the first contact, and then the reviewers are pushed to come back within 3 weeks. So theoretically, after 1 month, you know where you kind of stand with your paper. So, but I have had, as I said, some half a year, nothing. And then after 9 months, the first actually contact from the editor.
We've
so
had
there
to,
are different things. So, sorry.
So we've had to chase, I suppose chase, but follow up with, so be very careful if you do follow up, make sure it's appropriately worded, it's not harassing in any way, but following up with an editor when we haven't received any feedback over, I think it was nearly 9 months, and we did the follow up, and it eventually, well, it was nearly about 13 months before we actually had the feedback of what needed to change, because it had actually got through the process of review. But overall, that took nearly 2 years by the time the papers actually went through the process for publication. So then you're saying, well, how current is all the data in there as a result? So it's those type of things come into play.
Yeah, and then something else what you have mentioned before we go to the questions in the chat. You said conference paper, to learn from that. In a way, yes and no. Yes and no. Be extremely careful what you want to present there, what you want to sell actually to the conference. We have always downgraded as much as possible actually PhD papers, but not just PhD papers, actually even our papers, because there are journals out there which wants to have, the good journals, let's say at least 70% difference between any published paper, even conference paper. And that is actually an unpleasant thing. Because if you are kind of starting, or I mean, you know, preparing a paper and say, okay, I will prepare a paper for a conference and I will actually show my results there. What will you change afterwards? You cannot change the methodology. You cannot change the results. What, 70% will you just add on the discussion, or what, introduction and stuff like that? So think about that. I mean, it has happened to me as well, just once. And after that, I said, no go, any full papers for the conference anymore. Max extended abstract. I don't want to do that, because I mean, not just myself, I don't want to push my students to do that, because instead of having a decent paper, there was actually for some of them a little bit a challenge after that. But as I said, it has happened just once. And I said, I will not do that anymore. And we were even trying actually to change some conferences, you know, their actually requirements, to change it to 4-page extended abstract instead of full paper. So things like that's another thing where you have mentioned. I don't know, I don't want to go now deeper. I'm talking too much anyway. But yeah, that hasn't been anything linked to our experiences with the journalists, or doesn't matter, as in a role as an author or in a role as a reviewer. Yes, you mentioned something else, and then I'll stop talking. I'm sorry. You mentioned alone or in a group. I mean, from my perspective, I'm not really sure if there's anybody possible to do actually a good research by herself or himself. I haven't seen that actually for a while. Maybe if you, my personal view, okay? Maybe if you are actually, I don't know, I have no idea writing about what. But I mean, even if you go actually to and check the journals, find actually a few cases or maybe a few journals where you will see that there is just one author actually there. I mean, it's just not possible anymore. First of all, you don't have time, then you don't have time in a way. I mean, even if you are a PhD student, I hope that's clear that I mean, if you don't add your supervisor as a co-author, then from my perspective, you are actually breaching the ethical, whatever it is, okay? That's just no go. Because, you know, even many times you are discussing your paper with somebody and he or she gives you actually good feedback, or even discussing about a topic, and the topic was actually developed together with somebody. So it depends how you see stuff, but I would say, I really, I'm so sorry to say that, but I haven't really seen any good as a reviewer, any good paper published by one person, or not published, submitted by one person. As I said, that's my view, my personal view. And now I have kind of, yeah, answered, I guess, all the questions which were mentioned out there.
Did you have anything you want to contribute to that, Steve?
I mean, the difficulty with journals is that there are many, and I think all the advice has been good so far. You have to target the one that you think has got most relevance to your research. I mean, quite clearly, anybody who starts the 4-star journal, yeah, I mean, the reality is that you're unlikely to get sort of published there, because, of course, what they tend to sort of publish, and this is, you know, a very, very sort of broad observation. It's the sort of the funded research. So, you know, we're talking about big sort of projects which may involve many academics. So you're up against the people who are seasoned in this. So quite clearly that the thing to do if you're going to sort of to start is it can be solitary at the best of times, but the more that you can collaborate, the better. And I think that the advice is absolutely correct. Start sort of with, you know, as little ambitious as you can. I mean, it's no problem with starting 4-star journals, but don't be surprised if you are rejected. But like everything, as I fully appreciate, as someone who's been in academia for more years than I care to remember, writing it's a skill. Some people are really good at it, some people are not. The journal articles that I've reviewed in recent years, you can pretty much tell straight away what's going to be a good article, because of course it's very clear, very sort of succinct. I like an economic style of writing, something which I need to work on myself, dare I say it, but the ability to say as little as you need to say, but being persuasive at the same sort of time. And what I look for in a good article is that they're clear about what they're contributing to in terms of the research, because of course that's all that research should be. It should be original knowledge, and if you're not saying anything original or sort of contributing to knowledge, then don't be surprised if you're rejected. So a clear sense of where your research is situated, a good sense of why the methodology has been used, and I make no bones about the fact that I'm a qualitative researcher. I like the sort of those who sort of really examine what's going on and why, and clear results. And of course, the difficulty therein, as I always appreciate, is that sometimes you're not saying anything definitive, because of course the best research, of course, is that which gives you definite conclusions. Which of course tends to be statistically driven. It's interesting, just come back to sort of the time thing, if I may, just for a moment, that one of the things about COVID, certainly in terms of the medical journals, is that they're having to sort of not break the rules so much as to sort of to really expedite this sort of the time of publication of papers in the ongoing sort of quest to deal with COVID, because of course the whole thing about sort of medical research is that it's peer reviewed, and of course that's all any refereed journal is. It's a peer review process. So in times of crisis, it is very possible to sort of to get things published very quickly. But the time that it can be misleading. But I think you said, Jack, I mean, that somebody once has said, and I think it's a very broad, perhaps misleading sort of observation, but there may be some truth in it, that depending on how many stars the journal is will probably indicate how many years it takes you to get in. So if you're looking to get into a 4-star journal, it may take up to 4 years, and therein lies the big problem, that sort of by the time you're published, the research is not so much out of date, but it's not exactly fresh. And that's why conferences, which of course are sort of bang up to date, is a really great way to get your research known. And perhaps I'll conclude on this point, and that's part of what, and I use the sort of term advisedly, but deliberately nonetheless. It's a game, because of course to be published, and it's not surprising that you see the same names again and again. That they are seen as being sort of the people who've done it before, and if you're well known, then of course it's much easier to sort of to be published. Although the reality, of course, is that sort of quite often this is done blind anyway, because of course the sort of the names are taken off the papers when you look at these, so that you don't know who you're reviewing. But if you're working in a particular area, it's not hard to sort of to work out, because of course there are plenty of telltale signs. So, but being known in the community will always be helpful. And of course, the thing I'd advise is to use as much much guidance as you possibly can before submitting. Make the thing as good as you possibly can, because of course rejections, even though they're a very sort of normal part of the process, they're often very deflating, and I've seen people sort of driven to the verge of distraction and giving up, because of course it's really hard sometimes to get into the sort of the journal that you want to.
Okay, I've had where we deliberately went for a 4-star journal as one of the first forays into publishing, on the view that look at the type of feedback you would get. So submit in, it was rejected, but the amount of feedback and the quality of the feedback was brilliant. So that
thank you so much. Oh, thank you so much. I don't like this strategy. Okay, is that clear? I mean, just coming
so
in.
This is what we tried to see.
If you want to publish in that journal, okay, that's fair enough.
We targeted that journal
just to amuse me, or actually my colleagues, to give you good feedback. That's totally unfair. Okay,
Bastian,
and that has
I'll
happened so
reword
many
it.
times. Okay, reword it.
The intention was we'd love to have been published in that journal. We went in with the view is, because there's such a high rejection rate, we would get rejected. So we didn't go in with these rose-colored glasses that we would be accepted. We went in saying we'd love to be published within this journal, but with the reality, we were likely to get rejected. But the quality of the feedback was brilliant. It allowed us to actually then take that feedback, fold it back into the paper, and then say, right, realistically, based on this paper in the format it's now in, what is the journal it'd be suitable for? And it was actually published in that journal, which was a 3-star.
Just to say, I'm sorry, Jack, sorry, I cut across you,
Yeah.
but this is important, that reviewers, they don't get paid for this. It's something on
No.
top of everything else. So, and
I
I
know
think
that.
that to
I'm one of
review a
them.
paper properly, it can take a couple of days, non-stop, just reading that paper to get into the sort of crux of it. Sorry, Jack.
Totally agree with you. Having reviewed myself, it is, and if the paper is not written well, it is so frustrating.
Yeah,
because you're trying to get past the poor English to see what are the key messages they're trying to get across.
yeah. But
So then you've got,
see, the are different things. I mean, you even as a reviewer, and I mean, first of all, actually, the editor-in-chief or actually kind of yeah, any other, let's say, editor reads the paper first. You know, don't forget, what are we selling is always the idea. If there's actually a good idea behind the research, the editors will actually push it finally through. Even if the English is wrong, is bad in the beginning, doesn't matter. You can actually polish that as much as you want to. If you are editor-in-chief, I mean, yeah, editor, let's say, they will push that. So which papers are really struggling are the papers which are not bringing really a lot of new contribution. If you have a good paper, a good idea with actually a good contribution to that journal, you will be in. Doesn't matter how many rounds it will take, but finally the editor will get you through. You know, because that's the most important. I mean, you know, I mean, I agree. If the methodology is weak and I don't know what you can do, but even in that case, you can actually go once again and do maybe another statistical method or something like that. So the most important part is if the editor really likes the idea and sees it as a strong contribution of your uniqueness, novelty, whatever it is of your research, you'll be publishing it. If that's actually a paper which is nicely written, everything's perfectly fine, methodology is there, but it's really not bringing something extremely new, you will get, you will come through as well, probably.
really?
At one point you will. I mean, just read the papers. I mean, there are so many out there which have not really done something really new, but they're written in a good way. And they're written in a way which fits to the journal, and that's okay. So don't forget, but you are always selling your novelty. You're always saying you're selling your contribution. I mean, that's how I see it. Even, I mean, you know, I say now something else maybe. I hope you do agree with me, Stephen, and you, Jack, as well. If there's really something extremely nice and extremely interesting, they will not let you wait for half a year to get the first feedback, because they want to be the first ones who are publishing that. If that's really novel, that's exactly what actually Stephen was talking about. If there was something really extremely interesting in COVID, I mean, everybody was trying to do research in COVID. I have no idea why, but you know, just few of them were really actually fast, and they got published because that was something novel. The rest, I mean, probably there are so many papers right now on COVID, which will maybe never be, or maybe in 2 years actually out there. So don't forget, I mean, that's the first planning stage. Somebody asked, who was that actually? What are the planning stages? The first one is definitely that you are finding something what is really new and novel, and that will be publishable. That's the first thing. You know, that's how I see it. And then, I mean, Padmika asked a question. Could you please give few planning points for publication with the indexing journal? See, what I do with my students, as I said, we pick the journal. And then I said to them, I am always saying to them, now read 5, 6 papers which were highly cited in this journal. read them, read the style. How is it written? What is important? Because that means that was published in that journal. That means the editor was happy with it. The reviewers were happy with it. So try to kind of understand what is published there. What is the style of this journal? And that works actually so many times pretty well, that we are kind of trying to, maybe is a little bit, I mean, Stephen has mentioned some of the people write it well, some don't write it. I mean, for me, that is anyway kind of, yeah, I wouldn't say art, is rather kind of, you know, practicing. And the more you practice, the easier you will be actually kind of accepted as well. But once again, go through that journal, read few well-cited papers out of that journal, and based on that, you will get actually what has to be in the introduction, what has to be actually in the methodology, how it has to be presented, how the results are presented, how actually the discussion is written, in which direction the conclusions go and stuff like that. Just, it will help you. I mean, I don't want to say that that is really highly intellectual, but finally, writing a paper is nothing really highly intellectual. Getting a good idea, that is actually highly intellectual. And that is what, I mean, that's how I see it. Stephen is laughing right now, but that's the idea behind it. You know, I mean, you know, many times, I mean, I will say something what is totally against everything. But I mean, I know people who were actually, who sent a paper to somebody to be written with his results. Okay. So that person has nothing to do with the research, wrote it in a perfectly fine way because he knows how to do it. He has written so many papers for many different people. And then you do actually just a few changes and then it is done. So that is not intellectual work. That is actually kind of art of writing. So
yeah, it's kind of division of labor, and if you look around journal articles, you quite often in particular areas you see the same name cropping up time and time again. You think, gosh, they must be really busy people, but of course the reality is that quite often they get their name on it quite precisely because they may have led the research project, and it's because they're a name, they get the money in the first place rather. And of course, having their name on a paper it gives it added credibility. Yeah. Just to sort of give you a very quick story, when I was doing something fairly recently, I was doing the references, and I always like to get it right. And it was a paper about a connection between global warming and health, and so there was obviously a lot of collaboration. And I can't remember. I think there were 50 names on this paper. It took ages to even just get the sort of the list of collaborators. But what that tells you is that sort of, because somebody's made that point in the sort of the chat about collaboration. Collaboration is the name of the game. It's because the reality is there's I was going to say there's a limited number of journals, but the journals are growing. But of course, the sort of those that are at the sort of top are always going to be limited because of the nature of the process. Also, not helped into recent years. I mean this in a kind of positive way by the sort of the number of academics coming from China, because there are many thousand universities there, and they also want to publish. So it's many journals, and particularly the top-ranked journals, they're overloaded by sort of applications, if you like, or proposals, or sort of papers that they're submitted to. Hence the fact that that they have to sort of get through the sort of the huge backlog. So of course, collaboration is a sort of better way to make the sort of the limited cake go that bit further. And I would always say, if you're writing for the first time, do it with people who are seasoned, because of course you'll learn so much from it. And of course, dare I say it again in conclusion, somebody said to me many years ago, a PhD or sort of a doctor of any sort, it's like an apprenticeship. An apprenticeship is about sort of learning the sort of the art of the sort of the trade that you're in, and writing is one of those sort of aspects of that as I say, we can all be better at. Practice does indeed make perfect.
Yeah, but anyway, I mean, as a PhD student, as I said before, you cannot publish by yourself. No. Because your supervisor was actually strongly engaged in that. Even if you don't like him or her anymore because he was pushing you or stuff like that. But so many ideas were there discussed. So that's definitely a quote from the, I mean, That's clear. So once again, try to do that. What I mentioned, it helps that you really actually get deep into the style of a journal. You will see, you can actually really go through the journal, see that finally many papers will be written kind of in the same kind of way. And if you don't get this rejected, that's actually the first step forward. And as I said, if the idea is good, that means that the editor will want to get it through.
Okay.
If that is kind of, you know, another, and you know, so many times, you know, somebody comes with a context. I mean, they're trying they're trying to sell the context. I mean, that will never be published in a good journal. And many, you read actually PhDs and DBAs, they're just saying another organization, another, I don't know, country, another whatsoever. I mean, forget it. But that's the idea from the beginning on, it was wrong, something with a PhD or DBA. So don't do that. Another thing which is extremely important is strong methodology. Without a really good, strong methodology, you will never come through. I mean, if I go back and think about our problems while publishing, was many times that somebody who was actually really good, let's say in structural equation modeling, came with another 1 or 2 ideas and said, this test was not done, this test was not done. I don't know, you haven't checked, you have actually now 5 countries, but how would you say that they fit together? You cannot combine all the countries, let's say in one paper. You would have to go actually with one country and compare it to another one and stuff like that. So how can you present that in your data analysis? So things like that are coming then out, which will be kind of bothering you. Language, that's the easiest. I mean, you know what Jack said before. I mean, I've done few times that I saw that somebody sent the paper just in order to get feedback. And the feedback was really fast. I just wrote, the paper is not at the level to be published in this journal, with another few general remarks, and that's it. I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to spend 1 or 2 days on a paper where somebody is just actually coming in there to get actually good feedback. I don't do that anymore. Because if you are not serious enough, if you are not actually really trying hard to publish within the journal, that's really your intention to do it, you see that while you're reading it. You see that in the style of a paper, how that is written. And why should we spend then actually time on that if actually I don't know, his or her supervisor hasn't done it, and even the student has not done actually his homework to prepare a proper journal paper. And all of you have read actually at least 100 to 200 or 300 papers. So you should know how a good paper should be written. So don't send something which is not at the level what you have written. And that's why I said, go and exactly check how the journal papers are written in that distinct journal. I mean, not just what Jack has mentioned, kind of definitely the guidelines that you have to follow that, that's totally clear. But even how the style is there is written. And you have actually cited probably many papers out of one journal, which is really linked to your topic. That's another thing which is actually usually kind of a good sign that's there. And don't forget,
that's also
you should always include one or two papers, but not more. 2, max 3. 3 is max, really, from that journal. You should cite them. That's another actually kind of sign that you are acknowledging good work of that journal.
It's also citing it in the covering letter as well, when you're referring to why your paper is contributing to that particular journal. Virgie had her hand up. Did you, I'll hand over to Virgie at the moment.
I kind of had a lot of questions, and with all the inputs coming in, it's, you know, everything leads to a question, but that's good. You know, going back to your slide, the very first one, Jackie, where you said 3 to, you know, up to 3 years, and then later on during the discussion, I think Dr. Stevens said even up to 4 years, and Boston kind of seconded that too. You know, the timeline makes it quite overwhelming. You know, personally, at least for myself. Now, what is the probability that, yes, there is a level, the first level of rejection, which is maybe an editorial rejection, and there is the second level of rejection, which could be peer reviewed by external reviewers. Now, once we do go back and work on it, and this is, I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer this, what is the probability that it will go back to the same reviewers? Because perspectives differ always, and there's a new person looking at your paper, there's going to be more feedback, for sure. But will it go back to the same reviewers, or does it go back to different reviewers at that point? How does it play? Like, do you have any idea?
Each time I've had the same one come back to me when I've given feedback and said there's changes need to be made, I've actually had the article come back to me for second review. Have you had the same at Boston?
It depends on the journal. You have some journals who are actually at the end, as a reviewer, you will be asked, do you want to review it once again after the resubmission or after the review improvement? And sometimes you just don't want to read it once again, or you are not interested in your topic or something like that. Or you say, I don't want to do that. And then you will actually kind of tick that box, and then you will not get it once again. And that is actually a sign which is unpleasant, because I have fought with a paper. I mean, we finally published it, but we got actually in 2 rounds, one of them, 2 were actually all the time the same. The third one was changing. And then the third one, I mean, always came with new ideas, what should be improved. And that actually extended the review kind of, you know, once again, because you address the ideas, or let's say the comments of 1 or 2, plus the editor, and then somebody else comes in. So that usually is a little bit unpleasant thing. But or I mean, you can get somebody. I'll be now extremely unpleasant, but I'm getting so old that I can say that. You know, when I was younger, I always said, you know, now a professor who is actually in retirement, has nothing to do, is now actually picking every second word that is actually not written in a good way. Has happened as well, that we had actually 3 rounds of review, and one guy was coming actually all the time with something new. That means the first feedback was there, we addressed it. The second feedback was there, we addressed it. And then he came with a third one. But then actually the editor said, it's enough, paper is perfectly fine, I'm happy. The other reviewers were happy after the first review, so we'll publish it. So it depends. It depends on the policy of the journal.
And that is basically from the perspective of the publishing house or from the journal side. Looking at it from the perspective of the writers or the authors as such, and this is again a very, you know, subjective question, I realize, but how many iterations are worth it? Like, that's my, you know, I'm just throwing this out to find out. How long do you wait and with a journal, hoping that, yes, you know?
I mean, that's for me, I don't know, Stephen, say something as well. I mean, for me, see, my students and myself, we always picked really a good journal. And we wanted to publish there, okay? We really wanted to publish there. So we were definitely fighting and reviewing and doing everything as long as the editor was allowing us to do it. Okay? Because that's a psychological kind of way of thinking as well. I mean, the editor will tell you, I don't like you anymore.
Okay.
And then you are out. If he sends it, that's what I said before. If he or she sends it for the 3rd time to somebody, that means he wants to get that published, but he wants to have an okay from the reviewers. So we have never pulled out because we always wanted to publish exactly that paper in that journal. If I mean, it has happened, definitely it has happened to everybody. I mean, especially, you know, I had two kind of quality, which was quality in maintenance, quality in asset management. You don't have any impact factor journals actually on that. So you have to find another journal close to that. And we got, let's say, rejected. That's rejected once, that's rejected twice. But right now that paper was published in another journal a little bit, you know, differently with the impact factor 7. So it was really a good paper, but the journal was not fitting, it looks like, or the editor was not happy with it. Kind of, you know, he said, that's not for my audience. So we never pulled out from, let's say, because we were not happy with the feedback or with the number of feedbacks or requirements or whatsoever. So, I mean, that's how I do it. I don't know what Stephen will say or Jack.
Yeah, I mean, I coming back to the question, I think that what journals like to do is to be consistent in their advice. And I think if you constantly getting different reviewers, then don't be surprised if the goalpost, so to speak, keep shifting. So yeah, certainly, I'm always happy to sort of review something, but of course it's a majority decision normally that any journal likes to, if they possibly can, have 3 reviewers, and that way, if 2 want to publish and 1 doesn't, then it's a majority decision. But yeah, most of the time, people are sort of a similar view, and between us, when we do this, you get lots of good advice, and as long as people address it, then it gets through. But yeah, some is not. You know, was never going to be good enough, and therefore it is rejected. There's one which I'm really conscious of time, and it's coming from Maria Daniela. It's a curious one, actually, and it's being said here that, hello everyone, I'm in my 2nd year of PhD. In order to graduate, I need 2 publications. I'm a bit intrigued by that, because when I've done examining, you certainly look at the piece of work, and for sure, you know, if someone's got publications of their work in whatever format, but I you know, obviously best of all in referee journals, that's a good thing, but it's certainly not a criteria. So I'm a bit puzzled by that one. I can understand career, which is different, but merely to get your PhD, I've never worked on the basis somebody must have been published to sort of get it. So I don't know, maybe Maria would like to elaborate on that one.
Unless it's a PhD by publication.
Well, I see. Well,
yeah,
but 2nd year of a PhD, but it wouldn't be. I'm reading that as a sort of formal PhD. Whereas, just so people are aware, it's another route. I'm chairing a Viva in a couple of weeks' time, and what it is, it's for people who've been academics for a number of years. They may have published in journals, and you know they've never done a PhD, and that it's kind of retrospective way of doing it, because of course you've contributed to knowledge, so it's seen as another way of demonstrating your sort of your contribution. So anyway, maybe I've misread that, but the 2nd year of PhD would sound like it's a formal program.
So
there's more of a question in there.
My answer to Maria Daniela would be, first of all, talk to your supervisor, or even better, talk to your HDR office. Okay, they will exactly tell you what they see and what they understand as a publication. Whenever I have been working, a journal paper was not counted as a publication in case of a PhD, especially if that's a PhD by papers, where you usually need 3 papers. I would say the good universities, they definitely request to be impact factor or A-star or whatsoever, I mean, or ABCD or whatever it is, the ranking, and the conference papers were not actually included into that. And as I said before, don't spend results. It doesn't matter. I mean, yeah, 2nd year is anyway too early to do anything good, probably based on your results. But as I said, I have never worked with a university where a conference paper was counted as a paper.
Well, it doesn't have an ISBN number for starters. So I know the conference proceedings do, but
Yeah, it depends on the university. As I said, wherever I will work, actually, the papers have had to be ranked in one of the rankings. I mean, was it Australia with their ADBC or system, or was it actually impact factor? Some of them go with Scopus, but not many. So as I said, it depends on the level of the university.
Yeah, no, I mean, taking that message as read, it puts a tremendous amount of pressure on the person doing the PhD, because it's hard enough to do a PhD without having to churn out publications at the same time. And I know that it's often the way it works, but yeah, again, you know, what you want to do is to sort of to get the sort of the PhD to completion level and examine, because of course out of that will come all the other sort of byproducts, which of course is the sort of the conference papers and of course the journal articles.
There was a question coming from Jane. As we have discussed, Jane, I mean, you will be invited, let's say, to resubmit. Okay, I mean, it is written reject. If that's a reject, they will write you that you can, I mean, it depends how they write you the answer. Because many times it'll be written, it's rejected, but after a while you are kind of happy. I mean, we are happy to get it once again, or to accept, I mean, not to accept it, to get submitted once again to our journal. But if it's really kind of reject, that means they will tell you that you should find another journal.
It's in the wording here. It's where they get the resubmission not encouraged, or resubmission is encouraged. It depends on that letter you get.
Yeah, no, she asked reject.
So if it's been rejected,
I understand the reject is rejected, okay? Not kind of revision needed or something like that. Major or minor revision or something like that. Reject, they will tell you.
Because I've had from journals where you've had a rejection letter and feedback, but suggested that with review, consider resubmitting to the journal. I've also had letters from them that thank you, it's not aligned with
exactly
where we're heading with the journal. And it was with their aim that they were transitioning their journal to another slight different direction. So that was quite clearly not appropriate to take it back to that journal.
Okay, do we have to answer? I mean, are there any chats which we haven't answered?
I think we've covered
there was another one with publishing houses and essays or something like that. You know, I mean, I don't see them anymore. I don't know. I don't see the chat anymore. It's gone.
It's
so bear with me, I'll just find it.
What is an essay? I mean,
yes, which publishing house do you think will have the interest in essays?
Yeah, it is not, see, once again, it's not about a publishing house. It is generally about, we're talking about the journals right now. So majority of bigger publishing houses have actually different journals, and each of the journals has actually different, let's say, areas, topics, and different policy on that. So you have to find a journal where you would like to publish, not the publishing house. There's a little bit of difference. I mean, at least in my view. But as I said, I mean, you know, guys, you are reading journal papers, and you are reading journal papers, and you see from which journal are they coming, as well as what you see really often, that there are a few, let's say, usually 3-4 authors who are publishing in your research area. Follow those guys as well and check where they are publishing. That will give you a good indication as well where this topic which you are researching is, let's say, getting published. That is another option where how you can check how that goes. And it's usually like that. I mean, just check how often have you cited 1 or 2 or 3 authors, and usually you do cite them actually a little bit more than the other ones. So it is not about the house, the publishing house, it is about the journal. Is there anything else to be answered?
think one of the questions that were about conferences, just take you up a little bit further. If you're looking at wanting to trial writing, particularly if you're only really starting out, conferences are a good obviously set up on the appropriate parameters, but conferences are a good opportunity. For example, there's a BAM one coming up, and ANZAM, which is part of the Academy of Management as well, do conferences every year. Within the BAM, they actually have a doctoral day, which is for PhD students, and there are a lot of conferences that are actually doing that now. And they do the one-on-one small group discussions about papers that are submitted, which quite often are an extended, it's around a 600 word to 1,000 word extended abstract, and that's then roundtable discussed. Within the main conference, there's developmental papers, which Jenny spoke about earlier, which discussed in small group roundtables with peer and chair feedback. So that gives you the opportunity to take that feedback on your developmental paper, which is 1,000 to 2,000 words long, to then improve that paper to that next level. And then there's the full paper, which is chaired open forum with PowerPoint presentation. Now, those papers have all had peer review feedback, as has the developmental papers, with 2 or 3 peer reviews, and they have to be accepted to be able to present. And that could either be a sole author or co-authoring with usually supervisors or others. And really, some conferences do have associated journals that are more favourable when considering the conference papers when they want to take to that next level. Some don't. The BAM do have associated journals, but they don't necessarily take papers from the conference. But that just gives you that inroads of what does and doesn't work. Any comments in relation to conferences at all, Boston or Steve?
As I said before, I go back to that. I mean, I have always pushed my students to be part of the conferences, definitely, as much as possible. But as I said, take care that you are not selling too much at the conference. Bring actually one table, work around that table of results or your idea or something like that. But please do not come with your, let's say, complete theoretical framework and sell it actually at the conference. That is actually really, I mean, from my perspective, not a good idea. I have never allowed actually my students to do that. It's just actually kind of, for me, I don't know, I would say a little bit like a suicide or something like that. Don't do that, because that would mean that theoretically you will not be able to publish that in a good journal anymore, because you have already sold it.
So it's taking a lens on your thesis.
Things like that are really important. And even sometimes let's say when the things were really, really new, or we were trying really to establish something really interesting, we didn't even publish at the conferences before we got results. We didn't want that actually somebody else starts, maybe even a bigger organization starts actually doing exactly what we were trying to do, because we wanted to remain, let's say, the first ones, the original ones, let's say, things like that. So talk to your supervisors, talk to them, plan actually how you will publish, plan how you will be developing. I mean, definitely, as I said, conferences are extremely important, especially for the PhD students, because through that you are part actually of that movement. You get actually knowledge about different methods, different approaches, different problems. You know, actually other PhD students, you will be growing up, let's say, probably with them for the next few years and beyond. You will learn actually the guys you have been citing in your PhD, or you have read about those guys, and then you will, I don't know, meet them and talk to them and stuff like that. Extremely important. But as I said, plan with your supervisor what should be kind of presented there. But you have to go. You have to go.
It's brilliant for networking, and you find the connections you make there are invaluable. I have had 2 journals that have approached me coming out of BAM conferences. So you're not actually closing out to different journals. They may or may not approach you, but don't assume they will. Did you want to add anything to that at all, Steve?
No, I mean, that's really, really sensible. I think you're absolutely right that keyword networking. Of course, one of the big problems in the last 2 years has been COVID, because no matter how you do it, and of course, this is a great way to sort of interact with people. It's the face-to-face thing, and often not in the formal presentations, but afterwards. Over a cup of coffee
during
or a
the
drink,
evenings, sure.
So yeah, where
Sure,
people get to know one another, and
evenings.
that's how collaborations are formed, and that's how you get good ideas and sort of feedback, and potential examiners that identify themselves, not deliberately, because you realize, oh, this person's very sympathetic to my work, and also the possibility of working together. So it's yeah, absolutely. The conference is the sort of the way to do it, and think about it as being part of the process towards getting into sort of those journals. I mean, the other thing, and I know we're not talking about it, but I mean, writing texts or academic texts is another way where of course there may be a degree of refereeing in terms of the original proposal, but if you really want to get your ideas out of the sort of research you've carried out into the public forum as quickly as possible, writing a text can often be done in certainly less than 12 months. And there are some publishing houses that do it even quicker than that, but of course it's not a referee journal, which is what we're talking about today.
Okay. I've had journals where we've had about a month turnaround time, peer reviewed, and up to 3 years. So it's just that whole variability. And as you're saying, Boston, about it was the quick turnaround one was on sustainability.
That was a general sustainability. I mean, you don't have many, but as I said, see, but Vijay, first of all, I mean, that's what I have been always doing. Maybe it was wrong, but first of all, pick the journal where you would like to publish, where you really think it fits in what you have actually done. That's, I would say, the first decision you should make. And then you can actually, if you have 3 different journals, you would like to actually kind of publish there, then go on the homepage and you will see the rejection rate. You will see actually the turnaround time. Good journals, all of them have actually some statistics about those things. And then you can kind of try, to select, let's say, which one is more appropriate. But first of all, from my perspective, is the fit. The second one is the ranking of the journal. When we talk about that, as I said, exactly like that. Okay, we have now 5 or 3 or 4 maybe journals we could go. Let us check. And I always advise to go with the quality of the journal. That's actually my pick. And then the second one is kind of, let's say, turn around and stuff like that. It doesn't matter. I mean, if it fits really well and you are a little bit lucky, let's say, with reviewers, then you will be fast and faster. If that is not really a clear thing, they might ask a little bit more, or maybe they're not experts really exactly in that area, and they will ask questions. Sometimes you even get questions where you say, oh my God, I mean, where did they get that guy from? Because it's really off, let's say, the topic and things like that. So it's hard to say, but as I said, quick turnaround times. You have some journals which are really kind of, let's say, trying to get many papers exactly through that. And they really have a big pool of reviewers, and they're really working actually hard on them, because usually when we get, it's 4 weeks. And usually you are not ready in 4 weeks, but you say, okay, I'll do it, but just give me another 2 weeks. And then you have 2 weeks. Okay, and whenever I was kind of searching, when I was kind of editor, it's not an easy job. Before you send it out even, you get actually so many rejections from potential potential reviewers. Yes. I recall, we were doing for the, is really a good journal with right now Impact Factor 9. But when when I was searching for a paper, I guess, I don't know, I asked probably 10 different people actually, that finally I got 3. you know, and that takes time as well, because even to reply, you have 1 week, or sometimes you have 2 weeks, and then you go once again back to that. That means before even some of the editors can find 2 or 3 reviewers, it takes 1 month or sometimes even 2 months. And they say, okay, I'll do it. And then after the 4 weeks, they don't come back and they say, oh, I'm so sorry, I forgot, I don't have time. Sack. And then another 1 week, then another 1 month, then you have to find somebody. It takes another 2 weeks, or maybe you are lucky 1 week. And then it takes another 4 weeks that reviewer comes back. So it's another month or even more gone. So as I said, it depends. It's not really so straightforward, and you cannot plan, because guys like us are a little bit crazy and they're never really reliable. So that's unfortunately when you have to work with them, it's sometimes really frustrating, you know, really. I hate it. When I was really editor, I just hated that job, because I just was not able actually to follow actually my timelines because of guys like me.
And because it is voluntary, you're governed by the voluntary component with it.
Sure.
Even with these, say, for example, when you put papers into the BAM conference, you're expected to review 2 other papers as a peer review and to provide that feedback. So that is another good way of getting that experience up. Just in relation to the BAM conference, we've got a bit of a writing camp if anybody's interested in it. It's a virtual writing camp. Now this year, BAM is going to be hybrid. It's going to be virtual and face-to-face, we think. I'm on a couple of their chairs and a couple of their sessions, and we assume it's going to be some face-to-face, but COVID may dictate otherwise. But what DoctorateHub's got to have is a virtual writing retreat, really to guide you a bit on the writing your full or developmental paper for the BAM conference. And just looking at trying to take it, or if you're looking at taking that to the next step, to look for future publications. And it'll be done as 4 6-hour writing sessions, so on Saturdays from the 29th of January through to the 19th of February, and with feedback from coaches and thesis mentors. There'll also be an option to present the paper for feedback ahead of the BAM conference on the 19th of February if interested. And there's pricing options for 2 or 4 days contribution on that. And there's also another option around additional tenders to a pitch day for another conference being run by the Doctoral Hub. If you're interested, if you go through to the DoctorateHub website, the information's on that there. Did you want to ask any final questions at all, Vijay, or any?
Can I just make a point? Somebody's just put, this is Sumitra,
yes.
Who's talked about being published in a journal which acts for $500 US. I don't know about others, but I'm always of the view that if they ask for money, what is the game?
Well, some of them actually ask up to $2,000. US dollars.
See, I mean,
wow,
you know, is that a predatory journal or not? Just first check that. So, I mean, you do have really good journals, some of them, where you will be asked, but majority you will not be asked.
Yeah.
And even some universities, let's say, have policies. I mean, the previous one where I was working with, when I was associate in research, I was really fighting sometimes to get money, because many actually journalists in economics, they do ask for money, and that's it. So you theoretically have to pay, and unfortunately, but you have to understand and you have to know what journal that is. There are so many journals out there where they are really making money out of that stuff, and they're really fast in publishing, and actually the feedback is extremely nice. Just pay and you will get it through. But once again, check the rating of these journals. If they're not really kind of linked to Scopus, linked to Impact Factor, linked to, as we said, some other UK or Australian system or something like that, don't go for it. Just don't go. Once again, don't spend money. It's not money. Who cares? I mean, I've said many times, I'm ready to pay. I mean, in a minute, $1,000 just to get published in a journal I want to. but that will not bring me in there, unfortunately, you know, because I could earn so much more money actually during that time I'm preparing for that journal.
Yeah.
So 1,000 is nothing, but don't go for that. Usually we don't, as I said, if that's really totally clear, it's a good journal, is actually ranked highly and stuff like that, then theoretically, yes.
Yeah.
But usually we do not do that.
Well, this one's under scientific research. So they have a number of different journals and
Once
they're open
again,
access. So that'd be what they're charging for
go
processing
with,
for open access.
go with impact factor.
It's more like a library to a lot of other journals.
See,
Maybe that's why they are asking you to pay, but
once
yeah,
again,
it's not a journal in itself.
And guys, if you are not sure, just send an email to DoctorateHub and we will give you an answer, okay? After you have picked a paper, a journal. Just don't pay for something which is actually not worth it, because it makes no sense to spend money for things like that. And there are so many actually predatory out there, so don't do that.
May I also ask a question, if you don't mind? Because, well, we discuss impact factors and I know where we know to look for it, but could we share, you know, like, how do we do that? Because if you are a junior researcher, if you just PhD, yes.
We had actually a webinar exactly on that. Maybe somebody can share the link of that webinar, and the guys should actually check that, read about it. I mean, we were talking 1 hour about it. Will be actually in detail explained what are the rankings and stuff like that, how to find it, a good journal and things like that. Let us do that. Sure.
Bastian, if I'm allowed to interrupt you, I for sure will be happy to share that webinar at the forum post. But, you know, like if people will just simply listen to this recording, would also be nice to, you know, I understand exactly how can we be sure we are publishing in a respectful and exactly in a journal that will help our career instead of potentially firing back, instead of being a journal that could be unlisted at some point. So just for us to wrap up, exactly, because this is important. Yeah, if you are just starting your journey, you actually do not know where to go for. Yeah, so if you can share a bit how that journal is of good quality and exactly it's a journal to go for, I think the audience could benefit from that.
Yeah, I mean,
and by meaning Austin can also be Jay, can be Stephen, can be you.
Okay, well, there's two things to look at which cover the predatory type journals. There's the Beale listing, which is what was the name of that? Yeah, it's the Beale's listing and it's all the Capitals listing. They're two listings which give you the whitelisted and the blacklisted type articles. There's also the Australian Business Dean of Council, ABDC, which is the Australian ranking, and the Associated Learning and Professional Society publishers, who also have the ranking, and also the trying to think of the other one, the CABS one. So there's a number out there that'll actually allow you to see where the rankings are and also whether something is predatory, which tends to be on the Beale's listing. Do you want to add to that, Boston or Steve?
I mean, for me, I mean, what I'm following, I'm theoretically following, as you mentioned, ABDC journal list. That's Australian Business Deans Council. There you have A star, A, B, and C level of journals. Then you have actually the ABS, that's UK, ABS Academic Journal Quality Guide. Then you have our Scopus and Web of Science Impact Factor, or what they're called now, what, Clarivate, isn't it Clarivate?
Yeah,
exactly. That is actually the impact factor we are actually talking since ever about it, kind of, and Scopus. So JCR, that means Clarivate, that's the impact factor. Scopus, ABCD, and ABS, Australian one. And if you go to the homepage of a journal and you go then to the indexing databases, all of them should have that. You have to find something like that.
Yep.
That means if
And there's
that's not
also
there,
the,
if that's not there, I mean, what I will now say something maybe was not fair, but if the journal is not actually listed in Scopus, I even don't go further. As I said, because we are in academia, we are searching in Europe. For us, actually, the impact factor is the most important ones, in the States as well. So Clarivate, Scopus are the two which are the most important ones. Australia, ABDC is a little bit different ones. I mean, some of the good journals are really kind of ranked as C, and some of the Australian ones nobody knows are ranked as A or even A star. It's a little bit a different way of thinking how that quality is kind of established, but yeah, and definitely ABS, the UK with stars is definitely there. So if that's there, then you are fine and you can go with it. If not, I wouldn't. And don't make that mistake, okay, that you pay, even pay for something what is definitely not worth it. Don't do that. But as I said, if you have any questions, you can always actually write us an email and we will reply to you what is our opinion about a journal you have picked. I mean, I'm happy to do that, and I guess Stephen as well, and Jack as well, or anybody else from us, so to support in that direction.
There's also a site called the Scientific Journal Ranking, which gives you the H index, your open source, whether it's open source, closed source, the journal listing. So it gives you a bit of another slight angle on that. Maybe worth having a bit of a look at as well. But definitely the CABS and the ABDC is definitely the key ones I tend to go to. Other than that, I also tend to have a bit of a look at the Open Access Scholar Publisher Association and the Director of Open Access Journals. They both give you a white listing. Cables give you a black and white listing, and Bills give you a black listing. So it's well worth having a look at those as well. Did we have any more? Sorry.
Yeah. Be careful, because so many are using impact factor or something like that, and that impact factor is actually kind of impact factor of I have no idea who and how they calculate and stuff like that. They just want to sell that stuff and get actually journalists. So really be careful. As I said, if you want to proceed, I mean, if you want to continue or pursue a career in academia, then don't get deceived into area like that, because sometimes when even we are having interviews or searching for good people and stuff like that, we always check where they do have published, where they do publish, and where they have published, and that's the most important part. And in case you see that somebody has been kind of establishing her or his career based on the predatory or something like that, then that's a no-go in a minute.
We actually have a webinar coming up on predatory journals as well in a couple of weeks.
Okay, cool. So I will have to excuse myself, guys.
Okay. Any other comments, Vinny or VG? Or VG's had to step out. Any other comments at all, Vinny?
No, I'm all good. I'm good.
Any final comments, Steve?
No. I mean, it's all been said, as it were. It's a difficult process, but hey, nothing beats being published. And indeed, the old mantra: publish or perish.
It all takes time. Okay, what I'll do is I'll turn the recording off, and we'll go into the professors in, which I believe Stephen's staying on to cover off.
Yeah.
Okay. As I said,
question.
Thanks for being with us. Thanks for listening to some crazy stuff. I hope we have said something smart as well, not just criticizing. But as I said, whenever you have a question, you are always welcome to come, and we'll come actually back to you as soon as possible. Enoch, I don't agree totally with you, but yeah, could be as well. I have no idea. I mean, who said that? But it is many times the names. Yeah, I agree with that. But those names are usually publishing in good journals as well, because whenever you are reaching actually up to there that you have a name which will be cited, then the editors are searching and wanted actually to get a paper from you. So it is kind of a linkage between the two. It's a relationship definitely there. Okay, so once again, thanks, and I have to leave. Bye-bye.
Bye.